All right, guys. So we're doing a little bit of a review day. So you're not going to necessarily learn anything new. But we're going to do one graph and then we'll do some, go ahead and turn the page where you have the graph, but you're writing the equation. Okay, but there are no extra things to learn. We're just going to kind of do it forward and then again backward. So if you look at the top, okay, the first one should be poles. And those are created by factors that cancel out. Okay, then remember that vertical asymptotes are created by factors left over in the bottom. And x-intercepts are factors left over in the top. Okay, then the last new thing that you learned was how to find horizontal asymptotes. And remember that those follow the rules Bobo, Bottom, and Benson. So we're going to do one question forward, okay, where you have the equation, we're doing the graph. Then we'll do a couple backwards where you have the graph and you're writing the equation. So let's take a look at number one. First question, is it a Bobo, a Bottom, or Benson? Bobo is correct. Which means that for my horizontal asymptote, which I forgot to write here, so just give yourself a little spot. It's going to be y equals 0. Okay, and then remember that if I want y equals 0, I'm going to draw in my horizontal line right here. And remember that that tells me that the ends of my graph should curve off towards the x-axis. Every other feature you have to factor to be able to find it. So I'm going to put factor right here. Everything else has to be factored for you to find it. So let's take a look at the top. What method could we use for the top? Perfect squares is correct. The square root of x squared is what? And 16 square roots 2 plus or minus 4. Very good. So it's going to be x plus 4, x minus 4. Okay, and then I'll write perfect, or I'll put square root over here to the side. Okay. For the bottom, I have too many pieces to AC chart. That means I'm going to have to do what starts with a G. Grouping, very good. So for my grouping, I'm going to rewrite it over here to the side, but if you can try to squeeze it in, that's up to you. Okay, I'm looking for the GCF of the first two terms. And then the second two terms. What can I take out of the first two terms? X squared is correct. My x cubed is going to leave me with an extra x. My plus 4x squared is going to leave me with a plus 4. Okay, take a look at your second two terms. Okay, x and 4 don't have anything in common except that everything pretty much can divide by 1. What type of 1 am I going to take out of those? -1. Remember, if the first term's negative, you got to pull it. So now my negative x is a regular x, my -4 is now a regular plus. So once I get to there, I know my factors come from the factor that matches, okay, which in this case is my x plus 4. Those have to match each other, which they do. And then my second factor comes from the GCF that I had pulled out. I pulled out an x squared and a -1. That makes up factor number 2. Now remember, we need this to be broken down all the way. So this is not fully broken down. I can go one more time using which method? Square roots. X squared is going to break down into x and x. And then the square root of 1 is plus or minus 1. Okay, from there, we're looking through our equation to see stuff that can cross out. What do I have both on top and on bottom? The plus 4s, and if plus 4s cross out, the hole in the graph is going to be at -4 or -4 comma something. Okay, and if you forget, remember, that's why we wrote this up here at the top. Okay, so we wrote holes are created by the ones that cancel. Okay, vertical asymptotes are leftovers in the bottom. So do I have any X's left over in the bottom?
Yeah.
Yes, not only one, I actually have two. I have a +1 and a -1, which means X will equal -1 and X will equal +1. Okay, then remember, once you have those two numbers, you can go ahead and draw those asymptotes in. Because I'm not like waiting on a Y value like I would be for like a hole or something like that. So -1 is gonna be here. +1 is gonna be here. Okay, x-intercepts, look back at your notes. Where are those left over? On the top is correct. I have an X left on top. It's a -4, which means my actual x-intercept is gonna be at what number? +4, very good. And then remember for that one, it's always 4 comma something, but then you know the something's a 0. You can look it up in the chart later if you want to. Okay, but automatically that one is a 0. So you like, can you put that up, please? Okay, for my y-intercept, this is always gonna be zeros, partner. So I'm gonna put x equals 0, 0 comma something. Okay, then you have two numbers to look up in your chart. Remember, when you type into the calculator, you're only gonna put the parts that did not cross out. So go into y equals. Okay, alpha x to open up your fraction. Anybody else? Okay, and then you're looking up -4's partner and 0's partner. So I'm putting an x -4 on top, a +1 and a -1. Oops, I pushed graph, but hopefully, did you find the y values? What are they? -4 goes with 8/13, okay? And then your 0 goes with, huh? 15? No. -8/15, thank you. And then for your 0? -4? Very good. Good. All right, so now let's graph those. So 0, 4 would be right here. Okay, also notice that 0, 4 is a y-intercept, and I see that it ends up on the y-axis. That's right where we want it. Okay, my x-intercept is 4, 0, so that will be over here. And then for the whole, if you don't know what this number is, just divide it to see. Can you divide -8 by 15 so that we know what that is as a decimal? Okay, it would be -0.5-ish. So I'm gonna put here same as -4 comma -0.5. Okay, that way we know like where to actually put the hole in the graph. So -4 would be here, down 0.5 would be like right there. Okay, then, once you have done that, you're gonna hit graph in your calculator. Okay, notice that 2 vertical asymptotes means instead of your graph just being cut into 2 pieces, it should be cut into 3 pieces. Okay, and so I've already typed mine in. Okay, but that's what your graph should look like. So you have a little kind of U in the middle here. Then you have 1 over here. And then you have 1 over here. Okay. And then remember that at the ends of the graph, you should be curving off towards 0. And then at the asymptotes, you should be getting really, really close to those lines that you drew. Okay. Questions on that? All right, go ahead and turn the page. Okay, on the next page, you're gonna see that you already have the graph, but you're being asked to write the equation. So in order to write the equation, you have to identify where each feature happens. So take a look at this graph for me. Okay, can you tell me where we have holes? And it's actually kind of hard to tell. So let's just pick where the holes are gonna be. I think this pole right here was supposed to be at 8. But it needs to actually be like on the graph. So that's what it should have looked like. Okay. All right, so where did we, yes? You wait till minutes are over and then yes. Where does the hole in the graph happen? X equals what? 8 is correct. Okay, then go ahead and go down to your write the equation. Let's do this at the same time. I'm gonna put y equals big fraction. And if I want there to be a hole at 8, what would the factor need to say? Meaning like what the parentheses would say. -8, and where do holes go? Top, bottom, or both? Holes need to go in both so that they can cross out. So put an x -8 on top and on bottom. Next feature that I'm looking for is a vertical asymptote. Okay, in this graph, I have 2. Can you tell me what numbers the vertical asymptotes happen at? 4 is this one, very good, and what would this one be? It'd be 0, yeah, so you have the one here at 4, that's correct. Okay, but then we also have one here at 0. That kind of splits the graph a second time. So put x equals 0 and x equals 4. Where do vertical asymptotes go? Take a peek back at your first page if you don't remember. On the bottom is correct. So for the 4, I'm going to put an x -4 on bottom. How will I get an x equals 0? Do you remember where you put the x? Very good, on the outside. Okay, so I'm going to put my x on the outside right here. Okay, next thing I'm looking for are my x-intercepts, where the graph crosses the x-axis. Okay, does it hit the x-axis? Yes, and let's round this to be right in the middle, so that'd be -1, 2.5. So we'll call that 2.5. So I'll have x equals -2.5, which means what would my parentheses have said? Instead of -2.5, it would have been plus 2.5. And where do x-intercepts go in the equation? Top, bottom, or both? Top. It'd be x plus 2.5. Okay, last thing, your horizontal asymptote or what your ends are doing. Are they curving off towards anything specific? Okay, what are both ends curving off to? Oh, wait, hold on. We're missing an x-intercept. Which other x-intercept is there? 2.5, very good. You see it right here? So x is also equal to 2.5, which means that I also need an x minus 2.5. Okay. From there, what are the ends of my graph curving off towards? What number is this? Y equals 1, very good, which means it had to have been a bed seat, right? So I need to put numbers in the front. I'm gonna circle bed seat, Y equals 1. And then I just need to pick 2 numbers in the front that are gonna divide to give me 1. So I could put 2/2, 3/3. I'm gonna keep it easy and just put 1/1. Okay, but as long as the numbers that you pick divide to give you this number, okay, then that would be a potential equation. Okay, now last thing, remember that bed C means that you're supposed to have the same number of x's top and bottom, right? So count them and see if you do. 1, 2, 3. On bottom, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3. Then I know that I did it correctly. Okay? And that was why whenever we went on to the horizontal asymptote, I realized like, oh, we're missing one because we don't have the same number of x's. Okay, take a look at number 3. Okay, give that one a shot. So you're gonna identify your features and then write your equation. Identify your features, then write your equation. So can someone tell me, where do we have a hole in this graph? X equals what? Okay, -7, which means for my y equals. What is my parentheses gonna say? And it needs to go top and bottom if it's a hole. Okay, vertical asymptotes are gonna be your lines that cut your equation into pieces. Where do those lines happen at? 6 or -1, very good. And those factors end up where in the equation, top, bottom, or both? X plus 1 and x minus 6 will both go on bottom. Okay, x-intercepts are where it hits the x-axis. Where does it hit the x-axis this time? -4 and 2, which means it'll be an x plus 4 and an x minus 2. Okay, last thing, your horizontal asymptote. Okay, what are my ends flattening out towards? What's this number at? 3. So then I'm gonna put 3 over 1, so that y equals 3 is my Betsy. Okay, now if your ends curved out to 0, which might happen on your homework, but it didn't happen in your notes. If the ends go to 0, is it a Bobo or a Betsy? Bobo, then when you look at your equation, you should have more x's on the bottom than you do on the top. That's what a Bobo is when it's bigger on bottom. Okay? All right, last thing, take a look at the last page. Okay, this is almost the same. You're just writing the equation instead of looking at the picture. They're just gonna tell you where the things are. So go ahead and turn the page. It says I want to write the equation for a function with the following properties. Okay, y equals. Okay, I want a hole in the graph at 3. What should my equation say? Top and bottom, very good. Okay, then I want roots. Now remember, a root and an x-intercept are the same thing. Okay, remember that these are also sometimes called zeros. Okay, we learned that from our last testing unit. Those are all the same thing. So if my x-intercept is -7, what should the parentheses say? Plus 7. And if it's a multiplicity of 2, that means it's a double root. What do I do to it? Put a little squared on it. Very good. Okay, then also notice I'm writing that on the top because that's where x-intercepts go. Okay, I want vertical asymptotes at -4, 2, and 6. Then what should my factors be across the bottom? Okay, +4, -2, and -6. Okay, last thing, I want a horizontal asymptote at 0. Okay, well, in order for my Bobo, Bot, and Betsy to come out to be 0, which type did it have to be? It had to be a Bobo, which means it's supposed to be bigger on the bottom, and then you just count your x's. How many do I have on bottom? 4. How many do I have on top? Remember, it counts as 3 because this is a double. So you say I have 1, 2, 3 compared to 4, bigger on bottom. Check, we did. Get the idea? Okay. Last one, number 5. Y equals. In order for there to be a hole at 1, what does the factor have to say? Okay, -1, and it would have had to cancel, which means it needs to go top and bottom. Okay, then my roots are 0 and -8. What does the parentheses say for -8? Plus 8, and then how do I get to 0? X in the front or on the outside, very good. Okay, then vertical asymptote at 9 and 6, those go on the bottom. So -9 and -6. And then last thing for my horizontal asymptote, I want it to be 4. Okay, is it a Bobo, a Botan, or a Betsy if it needs to come out to 4? Betsy. Remember that a Bobo, it has to be 0. And Botan means you don't have one. So if I have one and it's 4, it has to be a Betsy, then I need to put numbers in the front that are going to divide to give me 0. Okay, also you should be checking if it's a bed seat that your X's across the top and the bottom should come out to be the same number. So I have 1, 2, 3 on top, I have 1, 2, 3 on. Make sense? Okay, so most of your homework today, okay, turn back to your front page, is you're doing the graphs. So I'm gonna do the first one with you to make sure you kind of get the idea, and then you'll have the rest of class to do your delta. Okay? Okay, so this is your first one. All right. So first thing I want you to do is, I think the back side of your notes is blank. Let's write the question down. So it's a negative 5x plus 15. Over 2x squared minus 16x plus 30. Okay, now remember, the very first feature, you can find this just looking at it. Is it a bobo, a button, or a bed seat? Bobo, because the top is what power? Just a regular x. And the bottom is an x squared. So that makes this a bobo. And that means that my HA, or horizontal asymptote, is going to be y equals 0. Okay, on your screen, pick horizontal asymptote. Okay, and then it's always going to pop up pretty much at 9, and you're going to have to drag it where you want it to be. So if I want the asymptote to be at 0, I'm going to grab the line and just drag it down to 0. Okay, so it should be right on top of your x-axis, which makes it a little bit harder to see, but you're going to click horizontal asymptote and then drag it to 0. Everybody good with that? Okay, step number 2 is I need to factor, because I can't find any of these other features right here. Okay, if it's not in factored form. What can I take out of the top? Okay, a -5. And make sure that you do pull the negative if the front term is negative. So I put divide -5. My x is going to be a regular x. Now, what happens to my 15 when I divide it by -5? Okay, very, very good. -3 is correct. Okay, now take a look at the bottom. How can we factor that? Okay, you can AC chart it, but you should GCF first. So if they can all divide, okay, you should do it because it'll make your AC chart a lot smaller numbers. So I'm going to divide these all by 2, which means that my 2x squared is now a 1x squared. What about my 16x in the middle? Now it's a minus. And then my 30 will go to a 15. Now, don't forget, your 2 is still there. So I'm going to kind of put a 2 up here in the front. Okay, now that I have this, I can AC chart that a lot more easily than I could have before. So set it up over here to the side. I want 1 times 15 is 15. My basement number is a -8. What will multiply to 15? 115 or 35. Okay, now they need to add, because my 15 was positive, to give me 8. Who am I picking? Okay, but if I want -8, I'll have to turn them both negative. So it'll be a -3 and a -5. Okay, so let's come over here to our thing. I'm not gonna rewrite the whole fraction. I'm just gonna put it underneath. This was an x minus 3 and an x minus 5. Okay, from there, what's gonna cross out? The minus 3s. Now, when the minus 3s cross out, what feature is that gonna give me? A hole. So I'm gonna write on my paper here, okay, that I'm gonna have a hole in the graph at 3 comma something. Can I graph this right now though? Not till I know the y value, which I don't have yet. We'll find it, but I'm gonna go on to the next feature. Okay, remember that VAs are x's left on the bottom. Do I have one? And it's a minus 5, so I'm gonna turn it to a what? Okay, so on your screen, click vertical asymptote. It's always gonna pop up at 9. You're gonna drag it over to be at 5. Okay, from there, x-intercepts are x's that are left on top. Do I have any? No, so I'm gonna put none for that. And then what that means is that I'm just not gonna click it on the screen. If you don't have a feature, just don't put one in your graph. Okay, then your y-intercept, you should remember from last time, is just whatever 0's partner is. And we'll look that up in the table here in a second. Okay, so now in your calculator, you're gonna type in the equation, but only the parts that didn't cross out. So I'm gonna put in my calculator, y equals -5 over 2x minus 5. Okay, notice all the other parts we're getting rid of because they crossed out. And then we're gonna find those y values. If everything in one part of the fraction crosses out, remember you should leave a 1. So I have a -5 on top over a 2x minus 5. Looking for a 0's partner is a half. And then 3's partner is 5 over 4. 0, a half will be pretty easy to find. Okay, let's hit our y-intercept. It's always gonna pop up at 9. I'm gonna drag it down to be halfway up the box. Okay, halfway up the box. And then for your other one, do you see how we need to know what 5 over 4 is? So you, I think, have a calculator on here. Okay, that if we do 5 divided by 4 at the bottom, do you see down here that it says 1.25? Okay, so I'm gonna write over here to the side, this is same as 3 comma 1.25. And then that will allow me to place the hole in the correct spot. Okay. So I'm gonna choose hole here. And then I'm gonna place it 3 on the X and then 1 and a little bit more on the Y. So it should look like that. That might be a little too high. There we go. Okay, once you've graphed all of your features, you're welcome to check it in the calculator, but when you hit plot, if your graph doesn't hit the dots that you drew, okay, then you know you messed up. You can also, though, in your calculator hit graph, just to see if like the shape is right. Okay, but if your graph totally misses where you put your hole, then your hole probably is in the wrong spot. Okay, and then I can see here and here that these both match. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Let me know if you guys need any help. You can also, if you don't like the calculator, you can do all this same stuff in Desmos. So if you need help with that, let me know.